This is David Kirshner for West Hempstead Echo, and thanks for joining us for a special local school board interview. I want to welcome Karen Brohm, the school board president, and I also want to welcome Brian Phillips, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations. So here we are again in the middle school. We're a week away from the elections, which will be taking place here on Tuesday, May 21st. The school year is almost over, but we still got a budget and we have elections to do. Karen, let's start with you. So as we're winding down another school year, maybe you can tell us about all the amazing accomplishments and the things that have been done by the faculty and the students.
Well, I could tell you all of them, but we'd have a lot more than 30 minutes to go. As you can see, I mean, I jotted a short list and it's three and a half pages long. So we have quite a bit, and I'm just going to read a few of them from each school, just so you have a valid amount. We have an E&L Ambassador program at Cornwall Avenue. We have hosted Community Career Days at Cornwall Avenue, which is the 1 through 3 elementary school. Cornwall Avenue and Chestnut Street have been listed as primary project schools, nationally recognized. They're the first ones on Long Island, so it's a phenomenal thing for us. George Washington has started a New York State peer mentoring program. They've started a Beautiful Me program, and they have 2 teams that compete regularly in hackathons across Long Island. We've had students recognized from there in contests with Assemblyman Ra. At the secondary school, we've had our 5th News 12 Scholar athlete in 4 years. And for anybody that thinks I don't know how to do math, there were twins one year. There were 2 of them in 1 year. Our boys basketball team went on to the Long Island Championship. I know you did a piece about that. Our girls soccer team were conference champions. Our boys volleyball team were also conference champions. We have ASA all-county art exhibitors here, some who have won scholarship for it. We have phenomenal programs that go on throughout the district every year, and we just continue to add on to all the good things that are happening here. We have the Seal of Biliteracy, the Seal of Civic Readiness, all those things that we've discussed in the budget season where it just increases every year. It might start off small, but every year it gets bigger and bigger.
And a 95% graduation rate?
Mid-90s for the last 5 years.
That's amazing. That's great. So let's kind of dive in a little bit to the budget. And you know, West Hempstead School District has a unique distinction of having its school budget shot down on the first pass for the last 2 years in a row. When you put the budget together, does that play any role in the fact that we know that this is a school district that's just being watched internally very, very closely?
I'll answer that. I mean, our budget is built for the needs of the district, so we don't budget for other means. We try to go ahead for the 24-25 school year with the proper budgeting, so there is no reason to put fluff in there that we would pull out. It's built to that purpose.
Well, I think that would bear out as we saw last year, because on the second pass you kept the numbers exactly the same, which was at the time I thought an interesting strategy because the vote got shot down, but it did pass. So the numbers are the numbers, and it did go through exactly as designed in the second pass. That was put together on the first pass.
Correct. I think the reason why is probably the budget was correct the first time around.
So with the proposed $77 million budget, how does West Hempstead spending per child compare to other surrounding districts?
We're relatively in the middle when you factor in all the costs that happen for all students. So some people might say we could strip out private school transportation costs, but we can't in our district. So when you factor in all the costs that we have several employees that go to private schools and work at that private school. We have to include those costs. That's part of the budget. So it'd be unfair for the district to say, don't count the cost of private schools when we pay those employees' salaries and we pay their pension costs and healthcare costs. So when you factor it all in, we're relatively dead center for cost per student.
Right in the middle.
And I think it's, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it's wise to say that we've seen it. I know you've been in the budget meetings. I know everybody's been on social media. But the people are looking at it as, here's the number, this is the budget, you have 1,200 kids in the building, just divide that by 1,200, and that is not the way to get to the cost per student, because you're not factoring in all the other students that we give services for, or those employees, or the busing. That it's just not feasible to do it that way.
Right. So it's basically a complex budget which accounts for both internal fixed hard costs of what you would see, very prominently in the school, but then there are other, I wouldn't call them hidden costs, but there are other costs that are outside of the physical school that have to be accounted for.
Right.
Okay. And the state school budget aid came in fairly recently. I know it kind of sweated it out for a while. And for the most part, it was almost fully intact, but with a $17,000 miss, which might be considered a rounding number. Any thoughts on if there is any impact on that, or is it just you're kind of happy that you got the number and we'll just kind of move forward without any real changes?
While we would have liked more aid, it's $17,000 was the difference from the governor's budget back in January. It will be factored into our spending. Like we understand that we should be getting that less amount for 24-25. It wasn't substantially enough to make wholesale changes, but we do have to think about it that for next year, that little piece will be not there.
And Brian, as you have contacts with people in Albany, what's the sentiment, or sort of like what's the temperature as it rolls out for next year and the next coming years? New York State's been hit with a lot of unexpected expenses this year. Do you feel going forward that the budgets will be fully intact, or is there a feeling like, no, we may be going into some troubled waters up ahead?
I think the state has recognized that they have to look into their foundation aid formula, which I think they've said they will be going forward. So we'll look forward to seeing how that will affect all the school districts in New York State, including West Hempstead.
Great. So at the last budget meeting, Superintendent Dan Riemann mentioned that the district is looking for new ways to generate revenue. Can you provide some details of what that might or possibly include?
It would be difficult to speak to, and we can't really have that conversation if it hasn't gone in front of the board yet.
Okay, great. And switching gears slightly to the reserve fund, how much will be left after this current budget cycle?
Sorry, I'm going to try to get the actual number. I don't have the actual full reserve number here with me, but we are using it and justly over time, including this coming school year, for the 24-25 budgeting process. But we are at the point of, as you use it up, and if you don't refill those reserves, there comes a point of no return.
Right. Without having the numbers in front, but how this year's numbers compare to last year's numbers?
We are using more reserves this year because we need more to more or less happen. But as expenditures go up and revenues go up, if it's just not enough, that piece of revenue has to be completed. In our sense, it would be reserves and fund balance.
Right. So with the current run rate with the reserves, at what point do we feel we're just going to be tapped out?
There is a finite amount of reserves. So we are hoping that whether it's state aid to increase in the future, or we are definitely at the point of understanding that expenditures cannot go up exponentially over time.
Right. So is there a long-term plan to replenish the reserve fund, or how does it get replenished? I guess would be a different way to ask the same question.
So we've had this conversation, and Brian can really speak to the larger piece of it, but we've had this conversation the last few years that we've done this interview, where we talk about back in, I want to say it was 2010, when the budget failed, because the years prior to that, we went out with 0 or less than 0% budgets, using up the reserves, because they said, oh, well, we have all this reserve money. And I can only say over and over again that if you use all the money in your savings account, then there's nothing left. So they tried to go out with a very large budget that year. It did not pass. They lowered the budget. It did pass the second time. And then it was like one of those ebbs and flows where your revenue then is larger than your expenses. And so we were able to, over the course of a few more years, replenish some of the revenue, some of the reserve funds. Now, that being said, over the last few years, part of the community was continually saying that we need to spend the reserves, spend the reserves, spend the reserves. We've tried to do so to kind of sway the budget a little. We never want to go out over the tax cap, but here we are now again, getting ourselves to the point where we're spending the reserves to keep us flat, and we're going to get to a low point.
We're getting to that abyss. Gotcha. And the transportation costs keep going up significantly. So almost 17% just last year alone. So what steps can be taken in the future to handle this issue? And is there the potential for the district to bring in perhaps consultants or others to kind of take a look at what's going on with the transportation costs and come up with perhaps some overarching solutions that may just not be apparent?
Well, we go out to bid for our transportation, so we get the lowest responsible bidder to provide transportation for our students. So we are always actively trying to spend properly when it comes to that. And when it comes to our multi-year agreement, we do use a consultant to help us out. And we have one more year on that current contract. So we will likely have a consultant assist us in later on in 24-25 for the future contract for transportation.
Are you talking about the same consultant, or perhaps getting in a new?
We will look at the district, and the board will look at consultants at that point in time. But we will see who's available and who actually wishes to help the district.
Right. But one of the challenges that the school district has had in the past has been that when it has been put out for bid, sometimes there's just one bid, which really kind of defeats the purpose of putting it out for bid. Has there been any change in that difficult scenario?
No, not really. And unfortunately, that is the process. We have to put it out for bid. We can't just say, all right, we're going to go with that guy. It has to go out. So we don't have a choice. And if we only get one bid, unfortunately, that's where we have to go. And that's been part of the issue, again, been discussed in quite a few meetings, that we've talked about the fact that this is happening. And we've gone to the legislators and the elected officials to say, you have to do something. Like this can't be okay. Like it's you don't want to use the collusion or whatever, but this is what's happening. I mean, and with these bus companies that have folded over the last few years since COVID, 2 or 3 of our major bus companies have folded and or been acquired by somebody else since COVID.
Yeah, it actually even goes back to Sandy when a bunch of bus companies got wiped out. Even then. Do other school districts, surrounding school districts, have the same sort of issues that we're with the bidding process?
Yes, they do. And they are all getting similar responses. One bid here or their bus company got taken over. So I sit on the Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association, and in that meeting is how I found out that the last company we had that got taken over was taken over because another district was saying they were now having this issue mid-year that their bus company had been taken over.
Gotcha. Medical costs, they're up $1.2 million. Are those just fixed sunk costs, or is there anything that the school district can do about it going forward?
That's a contractual. We do go through civil service in New York State for our insurance that we use for our employees, and I'm sure they're trying to mitigate cost increases also, but the last couple of years have been rough for them, and those costs get sent to the school districts that use that insurance plan.
Gotcha. So we'll talk a little bit about universal pre-K, because I know this issue has been raised several times in the meetings, certainly the meetings that I've been in, and the claim or the allegations have been that I believe it was last year, only 75 out of 90 seats were filled, and that a total of $155,000 of aid was lost over the past 2 years as a result of these unfilled seats. Can you respond to that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a grant, so we only get the funding if the student does attend the UPK program, so it's not lost. We just will not get additional funds for additional students. If a student does show up additionally, like another one who comes to the UPK program, we would get the grant funding for that student that's provided to the district by New York State. So we do have the ability to fill 90 seats in our program.
So was it a case that it was 90, the opportunity for 90 seats were offered and only 75 took the seats? Is that, okay.
And we do get, that might have been, September 15th or October 1st, but we get children and enrollees in every grade level throughout the year. I mean, we just got students coming in last week. So, we're almost at the end of the school year, and we will still get registrants throughout the year.
So I guess the question would be, though, of that balance of 15, those couldn't be filled during the course of the year. That's like it's just
they
a
can
limited.
be.
Oh, they
If
can
somebody
be.
comes,
Right.
yes, we just had 2 students enroll, 2
so
or 3
the
enroll
number has
recently.
been increasing.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
So the date that state picks is whatever date they say, and the count might have been 75 that date, and as Ms. Brohm said, like two people showed up in May. So the count has gone up.
Gotcha. And school enrollment, it continues to slide year over year, unfortunately for the last 10 years. And it seems like, just based on the demographics, that the trend is going to continue. I'm wondering, in the world of outside consultants, I come from the corporate world, so I always say outside consultants a lot, but and we I think we discussed this last year, but would it pay to bring in an outside consultant to kind of look at this trend and to see, how we can change the trend or adjust to that?
So I think that there's a couple of issues amongst this. So you're talking about the last 10 years. And in the last 5 or 6 years, we've lost the students from Island Park. Obviously, we know that. So the downward trend at the high school, or the secondary school now, was because of the loss of Island Park students. That is the largest major contributor to the loss of students in the secondary school. Now, across the community, and we all know, nobody ever says that it's the wrong thing to do for somebody to send their child to a private school or a parochial school or anything like that. The community moving into the district seems to be split. We have people that are sending their children here, and then people for religious reasons that send their children outside of the district. We're never going to be able to change the mindset of the people that are moving in who plan to send their children to a private school or parochial school for religious reasons.
Sure.
We wouldn't even ask to change that. Do you
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So as more people are moving in that are planning to do that, of course, we may get a smaller enrollment here, but it certainly changes. Our elementary school enrollment is increasing. So as it moves up, it's going to increase here. It's just a matter of the trend.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So you're talking about the grades kindergarten through what, 4th, 5th grade, or?
Yeah, approximately. I don't have the kindergarten count numbers, but like this was a good size cohort of children
Correct.
coming in. So as they're moving up, as long as they're living in West Hempstead, it's increasing, the class size is moving up.
That's great. And also, there's a lot of construction that's going on as well, with the old wholesale liquidators and other potential developments. And, even though those are transit hubs, I assume that at some point there will be additional numbers coming into the community as well. So hopefully that will.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what's
help.
going to come out of there, if there's going to be kids or no kids.
Right.
Exactly. But to come full circle on the consultancy, is what you're saying that you're feeling more confident or better that at least at the younger grades those numbers are going to increase, so there's no need necessarily at this point to go out? Is that a fair comment?
Well, I was just stating that the cohort, at the younger grades is getting a little bit larger. However, I'm just being honest for myself, I don't really know what a consultant can do about telling us how to make people moving into the district who have religious reasons or something else
Right.
to send their children here. We have a wonderful school program. We know that. We have a wonderful opportunity here for all children. My kids have graduated from here. They had phenomenal opportunities. My daughter graduated Malloy College in 2.5 years.
That's
you know,
awesome.
because of all the credits she got when she
Right.
left this building. And I would hate for the children that are here not to have those same opportunities because of cuts or something else. But again, that was great for me. I didn't send her elsewhere for religious reasons. And again, I hate to just say religious reasons, but that's the case. Most of the people going out of district are going out of district for religious reasons.
Right, but there are also charter schools.
100%, but it's a
right.
very small piece. We have people going out of school for charter schools, out of district for charter school, but it is a very small percentage at this time. That's
Right.
not to say that it won't increase.
But also special needs are also, and those numbers, which could be very small,
Right.
but the cost of the district.
But I'm talking about moving, somebody moving into district, they're coming here or they're going to a private school, and we know that, but there is an increasing population sending their students out of district. And again, everybody's right. I did it once. I had 3 children. 2 came here, 1 went out.
Gotcha. So in the coming budget, there were 8 or 9 teacher positions that were eliminated. Is that it as far as cuts are concerned, or you're looking at additional cuts going forward?
For this year, you mean?
For this year or for 2025?
Well, it's hard to say what 2025 will bring based on the cohorts and what the budget looks like.
Okay.
If there are cuts to be made and that's the way we have to do it, then just like this year, that's what'll have to happen. But we're going to do what we can to maintain a strong program for the students.
Gotcha. And so last year, the district's external audit noted that the district spending was about 96% of the budget, which would be pretty good for really any budget. I'm wondering, Brian, do you have any idea of what that number would potentially look like for this year?
No, this time is very difficult because we're still in May, but we are heading towards a point where we are spending in the same range, where we don't have an extensive amount of funds that aren't spent from our budget.
Gotcha. And the buildings in the school district, they're old. I mean, they're beautiful, and architecturally they're amazing, but boy, they're old. I mean, they're from 1912 to 1961. What are the plans to handle this aging infrastructure? And did these aging buildings cause any additional strain on the budget, which other schools which may have newer facilities don't have to deal with?
Well, you have to have money to have newer facilities. So, I mean, if you look back, we did a bond just recently, so we were able to update and change some items, but, I can go back to just right before we were doing the bond, and they said, well, what do you want to do with that building? And sitting on the board with other board members in a room, I said, I think we should knock the building down and rebuild it, and they all got up and walked away.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Because of that reason, it's an old building, we do have issues. But I think you have issues in new buildings as well. We've done what we can with the bond to upgrade the buildings as they are, but there's still going to be issues to be had.
I mean, I can see as I'm sitting in this beautiful library as an example of, an old building with, ultra-modern facilities and a great look. So you kind of have to get some compromise. And on that note, as we wrap things up, it's one of those like standard HR questions, which I always used to hate, but I feel that it's appropriate just given all the changes that are going on in the district. It's where do you see the district in 10 years from now? Like, how do you think things are going to look like differently than how they currently look like?
I think it's just you're going to see more technological, advancement on all subject areas, which will entail the district supporting those initiatives. So you might see, we do have one-on-one devices, but you might see a different kind of usage for those devices for the students, because I would say pre-COVID, it wasn't as much in that direction. So I can only imagine in 10 years from now, just to see what will possibly be used, it's just going to be totally different than what we're going through now. But like the bedrock would be students learning, starting from the kindergarten and pre-K level, of how to use those tools.
And what about the idea of distance learning as well? Is that something that's going to make a comeback after COVID, or is it that's sort of out there?
Meaning like Zooming from
like
home
Zooming,
kind of
yeah,
thing?
Yeah.
I think that I can speak for myself. There were quite a few students who had a lot of difficulty with that, not just here, but in other districts. And I don't know that anybody is looking for that to be the way that teaching is done. I think teaching in a classroom and being able to have that interaction with your peers and your educators is certainly the best way to be teaching. And just to speak to that whole 10-year piece of it, I don't know that I'll be sitting here 10 years from now. You never know where I'll be 10 years from now. But I will say this, and it's going to sound a little cheesy. We are West Hempstead, we are Rams, and we are strong. And no matter what comes our way, we're going to make it through 10 years from now.
Awesome. So Karen, Brian, I want to thank you both for your time, and Karen, as always, for your transparency. I know it's difficult to come in and rush through the busy day and to make it here. It's so appreciated, Brian, as well. This is a wrap. I want to thank you very much. This is David Kirshner for West Hempstead Echo.